Okay, so I'm here today with Elite 15 Hyrox athlete Rich Ryan. And not only is Rich a fantastic Hyrox athlete, he also puts out some of the very best content in the Hyrox space. He hosts the excellent RMR training podcast along with Meg Jacoby and Ryan Kent. Rich also has a fantastic YouTube channel, which you can find by searching Rich Ryan in YouTube. And he covers all kinds of topics, such as how to improve at every single station, why you should be doing more threshold running, and why Hyrox simulations probably aren't the best way to train. Rich Ryan, welcome to the show.
Cool, John. Appreciate it. Thank you for that intro.
Now, Rich, I'm curious to hear your overall reflections on your season. So you've had some phenomenal race results. You ran a 54:28 Hyrox Pro time in Chicago, which was one of the very fastest times we saw all season. You also ran the very fastest time in the men's pro doubles with a 48:31 with Peleo Mendez in Miami. And then Hyrox World Championships, you finished 11th overall. How do you reflect on your season? Are you content with how it's played out?
So yeah, overall, I'm happy, right? Like the way that I was able to make this type of progress over the course of the past several months. Like I've been doing and involved with Hyrox basically since I've been able to, and in 2021 is kind of when it came stateside. And I've been just like trying to train and refine and just like really figure out the best way to do this. I thought it would be an avenue that I could be fairly competitive in. And it just took a long time to just really figure out the best route for me and not worry about what everyone else is doing and not like overthink it, not overtrain. And I turned 39 this year. I'll be 40 next year. And to make that type of progress, it's just like very encouraging, and just like being able to feel like I am able to improve. In terms of like the results, like the way that things kind of ended, there's definitely some to be desired, but I'm happy with how I raced, right? Like there's how I've really had to approach this race over the course of several years is just with like too much respect and just like really slow playing it and trying to build up. And I never really put my hat in the ring to try to win a race, especially in like the biggest stage. So I'm very happy that I did that. I tried my hardest to race with those guys up front, and when a group of guys go out, usually only two end up coming out the other side, and one ends up ultimately winning. Very rarely you'll see a group of 5 or 6 dudes like competing until the very end of a race. People get spit out, and I just happen to be one of the athletes that got spit out. So the place I don't think is indicative in terms of like where I was compared to the competitive field this year. But like it's the result that I got on, but I'm happy with the race that I ran there. So upon reflection, it's encouraging that I was able to get that much better, especially at this age. And I feel like I'm onto some really interesting things. I had a lot of fun in training, and yeah, I'm just like optimistic for the next season for sure.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I definitely want to cover what you've been learning about your training over this past year because it's been very interesting to see how your training has seemed to evolve. But let's talk a little bit more about that World Championships. So you went into the race with this very optimistic mindset. You went in to win the race. What did that first run and that first ski erg feel like? What was that pace right at the front of the race?
Yeah, for sure. Like I thought I was gonna win. Like in my brain, I was like, I'm gonna win. And I think this a lot in these races, and it never comes out that way. But I still have the belief in myself to think that I have a chance to win, and that I have the fitness, and when it comes down to it, I have the grit of it. But yes, I was never prepared to. I never had the firsthand experience of going out that hard in the first run. And at World Championships, that first run was actually a little bit longer in Chicago. So, but I knew I had the run fitness to engage, and I thought just the way that my training was going that would be able to kind of like weather that storm, and I prepared for that. In my training, I would go out and like run really fast up front and then just try to settle things in and then see what would happen on the back half of the race. So it felt like in the moment I was like, I'm here. I can be here. I'm not overextended. Upon reflection, like it did feel fast. It was definitely a fast way to enter that race. But again, I don't have any regrets for it. And it's just a matter of understanding how I can then take that feeling that came of that first run, like later in the race, and how I can adjust my training to kind of train for that. Where this being my first crack at really going out extremely hard, I just wasn't experienced, so I didn't have a good understanding of what it was actually going to feel like. So I did my best to train that way, but without the race experience, it was a lofty goal. for sure.
Yeah, it's a lofty goal, but it's exactly what we want to see. Like, especially as people watching you race, we want to see you race with ambition. So I'm very glad as a spectator that you decided to take that approach, Rich. And
Appreciate that.
let's talk a little bit about the sleds. So you actually had the fastest time on the day on the sled push. You had the second fastest time on the sled pull. What do you think enabled you to do so well on the sleds?
So when I first started doing Hyrox, the sleds were the thing that I was not sure I was going to even be able to finish. Like I was so scared of the sleds that first race that I ran. This was like in 2021, and there wasn't as much access, right? Like an affiliate gym wasn't a thing. There wasn't really like you could find sleds here or there, but I really had to go out of my way, and I had no idea how I was going to feel, and I just saw people getting killed by the sleds left and right. And that first like season, I also got killed. I was able to do it, but I was like, it really took the toll on me as a runner coming into it. I didn't have like an extensive strength background. I had some for sure. So I was really cautious and concerned about what the sleds were going to be like. And leading up into like this past several seasons, I remained cautious. And there was one race that happened in Spain, in Madrid. I went to Madrid to go get a time, ideally, to get into the majors. This was the 23-24 season. And I went over there and just got crushed. And then I like reflected and I realized that I was racing scared. I was afraid of these sleds. And in that moment, like after that race, it's like, I just need to double down. I just need to make this, I need to be good at this. There's no reason I can't excel here if I put my attention and my like physical effort here instead of just trying to manage it and kind of like looking at myself and being like, oh, I'm just not good at sleds. It's like, no, like I just haven't really tried to get better at the sleds. I haven't tried to train hard. I haven't tried to race them well. And so that was so like being able to have that kind of light turn on for me. It's been about a year and a half process, but like really focusing on training hard on the sleds. And that's with compromised running workouts. That's with like standalone sled workouts and figuring out the right balance of load and intensity and how to really improve. Like it just feels good, right? It's encouraging to see what like the hard work can do even within a specific station. So, and that was kind of that was all my races this year. I was able to race really well through the sleds. I probably went a little bit too hard on the sleds at Worlds, and that was another reason why things kind of came out the other side. But like knowing that that work pays off, again, it leaves me optimistic. Like, where else can I improve then in this sport?
Yeah, that must be super encouraging to basically identify an issue you had, and then you basically tackled it, and now you're one of the very best at the sleds. So walk us a little bit more through that playbook. So if you had to summarize what it takes to get very good at sled push and very good at sled pull, what are the essential components? What do people really need to be paying attention to?
So my process through this, I was like, I'm just gonna push it a bunch all the time. I'm just gonna do it 4 times a week. And ultimately that was too much. Like I started feeling a little bit lower leg pain, foot pain, and it was like I might like be overdoing it here. So when I what kind of looks now, it's 2 times per week, and it's not necessarily a linear progression. And that's something that I've kind of leaned on a little bit too much, right? It's like, okay, this week we're like an example linear progression would be this week I'm pushing it 3 by 25 meters. Next week I'll push it 3 by 37 meters, and then I'll do like 4 by 25 meters, something like that, where it'd just be like continuously progressing up. I took a more undulated progression approach where it'd be this week the load is going to be very heavy for short. This week it's going to be a little bit lighter and fast. This week will be lighter and just like long. So trying to hit it from all different angles, because as we're seeing, right, like it's hard to really know what you're going to get on race day. So kind of being prepared for all of it's very helpful. And then kind of rotating between those three modalities, like heavy and short, like heavy, like yeah, heavy and short. And then I also have these workouts where it would just be like, I'm going to do unbroken lengths at all costs. And just like, I'm going to do 25 or 37 meters or 50 meters unbroken and then rest for however long that takes. It could be like 4 to 6 minutes and then try to repeat that. So there's like a strength component, there's a speed component, and then there's like a lactate byproduct tolerance component. And so trying to tackle all of those three. And if you come into the sled with training session with some kind of intent that way, it's like, hey, what do I need to work on? Do I need to just like get stronger globally so I can move this thing? Or is it like, do my legs start to burn up and like this byproduct is like slowing me down? Do I just need to get a little bit more tolerant at that? Or am I just like too slow? Like if I spend less time moving the sled because I'm like going faster, will that be helpful? So I think of tackling it from all three of those directions. And then as it gets closer into like the race itself, like in like your training block, then I would do one of those workouts per week where it'd be kind of addressing one of those three pillars. And then I would do something that is going to be a little bit more compromised. So in these compromised running workouts, I still like it to be like higher output. I found like if you're doing a workout and you're pushing a sled 30 minutes into the workout, it's just like really slow and it's really taxing. So I always try to load the sled in like the front of those like compromised running workouts, like a tempo type workouts.
Amazing. So you've got those three pillars. You've got the strength pillar, you've got the speed pillar, and you've also got this lactate clearance pillar. And each of your sled workouts is designed around hitting one of those specific objectives. How do you think about the just the pure strength training side of the sled training? So we've heard a lot of people say, it's about improving just strength overall. Maybe you need to get better at the back squat, at the deadlift. Do you feel like people really should be training the sleds directly, or do you think some of the supplemental training is equally or even more important?
I think that the specific training is going to be better bang for buck and it's going to move the needle the most.
Okay.
I think a lot of it comes down to just recoverability. With you're on the sled, like you're not getting any eccentric load, right? Like as your muscle is lengthening, it's not like pushing, like there's not weight pushing against you, right? It's almost all concentric movement because it's not vertical, it's not up and down, it's horizontal. So you're just like pushing into it and it's not like pressing into you as your muscles are lengthening, which just creates a lot of like that muscle damage in like a back squat or a deadlift or a Bulgarian split squat or lunges, right? Where it's like loaded directly on top of you. That's why you get that like real nasty soreness. So I just feel like the recoverability from like traditional strength training is, there's definitely some carryover, but like if you're pinched on time and you just like need to get better at the sleds, like doing the sleds, I think is going to just like be better.
So in your own training, are you putting less of an emphasis on pure strength training than you have in the past?
Yeah, it depends on where it is in terms of like my season. When I first started, like I mentioned, I was like straight up runner guy. Like I had some CrossFit background. Like I can't say I was like straight up runner, but like um, there was like times where I just like was focused on running when when the sport kind of happened again, and I needed to move into like a more of a hypertrophy phase, right? Like I identified it's like I'm not strong enough, I'm not big enough, I need to improve on that. So I've done pieces where I needed to put on muscle, and to do that eccentric loading that creates that muscle damage is like critical, right? Like the muscle damage is essentially what creates the muscle growth. So I did those phases because I needed to get bigger and stronger. Um, but now it's kind of like yeah, like if I get hurt doing a deadlift, like I'm just gonna feel so stupid, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Like I already know I'm like strong enough. I have like the requisite strength, and now if I can like put it out as much as I can, like in the specifics, where I do like to do it is just for the variety, right? Just for like the palatability of training. Where it's like I haven't done squats in a while. Let's see, let's do some front squats. Let's put it in like a Metcon. I like doing deadlifts. I just like enjoy it. So that's where I think there's like good place for it. But like I don't do too much of that. And I'm in like an off season block a little bit now. So I'll be doing a little more frequently in strength. But come the season, I do like one strength day per week. And a lot of it is like either accessory work to build specific strength for the station work, or it is like just the station work.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So you're maybe so in terms of movements like back squat and the deadlift, what I'm hearing you saying, Rich, is that during the season you're maybe hitting this once a week, if that. Is that correct?
If that,
If
like
that.
back squats in season, like I'm almost not doing at all. It's just like too much. And like figuring out like what the appropriate load is going to be and like how I want to approach it is a work in progress as well. Like if I can put this in place, like how does it look in terms of like volume and load and intent? But in season, like, yeah, not really at all.
Okay. Okay. And do you have a sense of what you could do for those major lifts? So even though you're not practicing them on a regular basis, what kind of strength do you think you're at during a typical Hyrox season in terms of what you could be placing on the bar?
Yeah, that's a great question. So like my lifetime PRs are in the back squat, it's 325. The deadlift is 405. I'm talking pounds. And my bench is 245. So in season, I think my bench would probably be pretty close to that. Like that's like a newer thing, doing more bench press. Deadlift, I could probably pull like 380, and back squat maybe 300. I would say 280, 285. I think if I like worked up and was like had a belt on and like had like the lifter shoes, the knee sleeves, the whole deal. So I don't know what percentage is that. You got a percentage brain like that you can run those percentages like that.
What is it? It's like 80 to 90%. Like in my mind, I'm thinking this isn't that far off.
Yeah, and that's something that I'm interested in what you think on your end. Like, and in general, like to maintain strength, it doesn't take that much. Like to maintain like your speed and like your like turnover as a runner, or just like your speed in general, that does take some like frequency to like maintain that, and those diminish pretty quick. But strength gains, they kind of stick around. So as long as you're like doing something like heavy, like I
Yeah.
found the sled push, in particular for my front squat for some reason, that translates because I think it is a little bit more quad heavy. And like if I'm doing like heavy sled pulls, like it's not directly the same as a deadlift, right? But like I'm still moving something pretty heavy. So strength gains are easy to maintain, and so is muscle mass, right? Like if muscle mass is on, it's
Yeah.
real hard to lose it unless like you're actually trying to.
Yeah, that's actually been one of the biggest surprises for me this season. So in terms of my background, I've typically done a lot of powerlifting. So I've really focused on that squat, deadlift, bench, and probably for my first year and a half, I was really focusing primarily on those movements. But over the past 8 months, I've really tried to dial in more of those Hyrox circuits. And in terms of doing a DEXA scan, so I did look at body composition. And one thing that surprised me is that the muscle mass pretty much did not change at all. So even
Right.
though I'm not doing that powerlifting, that bodybuilding work, the muscle mass is still staying there just from those Hyrox movements. So I think that's one of the things that has surprised me about training for Hyrox.
And your body fat percentage is probably down
Yeah, no, it's come down a little bit. And
with all the aerobic and cardio stuff. Yeah, what have you found in terms of how to implement the power lifts? Like, are you still trying to hang on to it, or you're just kind of like how's that looking on your end?
yeah, so I've dramatically reduced the amount of powerlifting that I'm doing. And for me, my strength numbers are similar to yours. So in terms of where I've been in terms of my max strengths. So in a similar way, I've realized that's definitely not the limitation for me personally. So for me personally, the limiter, it's not even the running for me. It's really just the being able to go 5 minutes on the station without completely fatiguing. So that's been the thing that I've been really trying to dial in. So yeah. So honestly, in terms of powerlifting, I've just almost completely dropped it for the moment. But now that I'm heading towards an off season, I will be picking some of that back up again.
Right, because it's almost like the opposite end of what you need to work on. You just need to work on continue like just the totality of the race and the totality of just like all of the stations. So like doing 20 seconds of work with like 2 minute rest, it's like not gonna do it.
Exactly, exactly. Rich. So the sleds, that's clearly one of these areas that you've gotten a lot better. What are some of the other areas where you feel like you've really improved and made progress this season? What do you think has really resulted in those faster times?
So yeah, when I look at it all, because my background is running, and then I started doing CrossFit. That's my strength background comes from like the CrossFit world. That's like where a lot of like I've done a lot of like learning and practicing. So I felt like I had like the pieces on both ends. And then when I was looking at it, I was like, what is going like how is it that I could beat these athletes in a race from whatever, like 5K to half marathon, and I could do like lift as much and also do like metcons faster than them. Like, why am I like in this race? Am I not performing against them as well as I think I should? And to me, it really boils down just to the totality of the race. Kind of just how you're saying, it's like it's just long. It is just a long race. I'm a runner, but I'm a middle distance runner by my background, right? So races between 4 and 15 minutes is really where I spent most of my athletic career in endurance. And then when we're moving into a race that's 60 minutes, 60 minutes plus, it's like it's a different style of training. So I was trying to apply all these like things that I like to do, which is middle distance, interval, shorter pieces, and then putting that just in like building more volume around that same style. So really what I needed to do and what I wasn't that interested in doing was just like doing longer grindy workouts and just like spending time in this area of discomfort that to me is not incredibly familiar. And but like once I knew if I could just take these pieces that I had built and then just put this base of like what we call like strength in the endurance world, right? Like this like aerobic strength and just something that I could do for longer amounts of time. It's like I just had to suck it up and do it. It's like it was right there. It was like the one thing I wasn't doing, and I was like trying to work my way around it, trying to like negotiate with myself to be like, you know what, maybe this will work if I do these intervals, just do more of them. But it's like I just needed to go hard for 20 minutes until it felt terrible, and then sit there for 30 more minutes. And now it was like kind of that simple. And then it just like really opened up the possibilities in terms of like how I could adjust those. It made training a little bit more fun because I was able to kind of explore new things. So I think that was very like a really helpful kind of realization that I had.
And that's just giving you this overall better endurance later into the race, I imagine.
For sure. With the precursor to this, I was just trying to think like, how could I do this smarter? Because I was just doing a lot of things, and I was thinking, and then I kind of turned to the triathlete world because those athletes, it's multi-discipline, and they just do a ton of volume, and they're like really dialed in, right? They have a lot of tech and the way that they do it. And I just thought like, and what I realized, like they would be trying to figure out what kind of metric they could follow to like guide their training. And so I decided to like really learn more about like heart rate training and how we could apply it to Hyrox. And then like trying to like I understood what kind of like energy system I needed to develop and like where I needed to be for this totality of the race, right? We want to sit like right around that anaerobic threshold zone, which is like you're like low zone 4. It's at this rate, it's at this piece that like if you cross this line, like your fatigue will jump exponentially. But if you sit right under it, you could hang there for about an hour of racing. It's like, okay, well, that's what I need to do. I'm going to race for about an hour. So I started to track how much time I was spending in this specific zone and then just like building my progression based off of that, right? So I was like, okay, this workout's going to be 20 minutes at zone 4. And then I was like 25 minutes. And then that was a linear progression. And like building that up and trying to find a sweet spot for how much time I could spend there in training without cooking myself. So that
Hmm.
was a huge shift in my training. And that was like basically the only metric that I really followed for the whole year.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. So, okay, so you're looking at this time spent in low zone 4. So, would this be a little bit of a lower heart rate compared to traditional running threshold, or how would you benchmark it against just a pure running threshold workout?
So it would be right. So it's because we're multi-modality, the heart rate doesn't transfer like 1 to 1 from running into like all this stuff that we're doing. But we're doing a lot of running, right? So we can like I've have just like drew that line, be like, we can make it like a 1 to 1 if I'm running and if I cross over into this like zone 4 area that I need to be. And then I keep my effort high and I go do a sled push or a row or a ski or whatever, and my heart rate drops because the positions that I'm in change. I still count it. I'm like, I'm not going out of my threshold because my heart rate dipped. As long as my effort stays high, then I'm just like counting it all the way through. And then I get back on the runner and it pops back up. And that's one thing that was a little bit challenging. And there was a lot of trial and error there trying to figure out where my heart rate zones would be based off the different movements that I was doing. Because as your body changes positions, your heart is going to be asked to do a different effort. And so if you're sitting on the rower, you're sitting. Half of your body is horizontal, which is going to be easier for your heart to pump blood to as opposed to standing. Like if you're running, right? You're not working at as much gravity. So your heart rate's going to come down a little bit. Your effort might not change. And the lactic byproduct that's happening, that lactate doesn't change. And that's basically what we're going for. So I kind of had to just like understand like how that worked across all of the modalities and just be like, I feel like I'm there. And then it can be a little bit RPE once I've kind of figured that out over the course of like several months.
Okay. Yeah. So I really want to keep on drilling into this because I do feel like this is really a key part of training. So give us more of a sense for what exactly that RPE would be. So is it like an 8 or 9 out of 10? And how does it compare to a race effort?
So because these intervals are longer, right? They're going to be 40, 55 minutes. It needs to start at a lower RPE than say if you went to the track and did 10 by 3 minutes, where it could be immediately like an 8, 8.5. This is probably going to be like a 7, 7.5, and it's going to take about 10 or 12 minutes for you to actually get into that zone 4, as opposed to doing shorter intervals where you can go a little bit faster to get that amount of time there. So I would say it kind of starts at 7.5, and I try to keep my wits about me so I'm not like, this is a race effort. right? So it's going to be like slightly below. And so the goal for this is volume. And if we are pushing it, like the intensity a little bit too much, it's going to reduce the amount of time we could actually spend in this zone, right? So once we're there, and that's where the metric is a nice thing to have, like a heart rate is nice to have. So you can be I'm still there and the work is still being done. So I don't need to go any faster. So it kind of ends up probably being like 8.5 by the end, but I try to keep it away from like race effort.
Okay, so it's slightly below race effort, but if people out there are listening and then they're starting to do these kinds of workouts, maybe the feeling is that it's similar to a race. So it's not quite a race effort, but it's going to feel hard. It's going to feel like you are really working, and this is the type of workout you're going to get a benefit from. Is that a good way to think about it?
Yeah, that's like if you want to just make it straight up intuitive, right? Like we want to try to chase the feeling of the race,
Yeah, so you're chasing the feeling of the race. Maybe you're not quite getting there, but it's getting close. It's getting close.
You're getting
And
close. You're just not gritting your teeth so that
yeah,
you're not like I need to push through this, whatever. You're just like, I'm just gonna sit here. I'm just gonna sit here. I'm just gonna take it.
okay, and Rich, obviously you've built up your capacity to be able to do workouts like this. So give us a sense of, in that peak block leading up to Worlds, how many days a week were you doing workouts like this? And give us a sense for the total amount of volume that you were doing on a weekly basis in this zone. Were you tracking that?
I was tracking that. That was really the main metric that I was tracking was how much time I would accumulate here. So at its peak, if I was getting like 100 minutes, so like it would be like two efforts of like 50 minutes. That's about as much as I could really tolerate there. And I've played around with like different frequency, right? Like doing it like double threshold, right? We'll just call that what it is. Like doing a threshold session in the morning and the evening. It's a great way to accumulate more time, but I found the recoverability from that was like harder on me because I got less recovery time than actually the huge dose. So the dosage I like to be a little bit bigger, where some people do respond a little bit better to like the shorter doses like more frequently, but that just like didn't work for me.
So looking at the other competitors in the Elite 15, do you have a sense that this type of workout has also been critical for their success as well? So maybe let me phrase the question this way. Do you feel like you could pretty much line people up in terms of their race performance by how much time they're spending executing this type of workout? How predictive do you feel like this is in terms of ultimate performance?
That I've honestly never even thought about that. I don't know. I think and this comes away for like my theory on this is there are different types of athletes in terms of what they can tolerate from like a physical like discomfort standpoint that I think some athletes they might do better with the smaller frequencies and then on race day they can like with more frequency, I'm sorry, with smaller dosage that they can just like kind of like run through a wall if they need to. If called upon, they'll be able to just like really grit their teeth and have this like fire in them that no matter what. I think Hunter's a great example. I think Lauren Weeks is a great example of that, where it's just like they're just so tough that they can just like blast through it. So they might do better with these smaller doses of threshold and like higher intensity pieces because when push comes to shove, they're just gonna like be able to do it. And maybe there's some genetic component that like of aerobic capacity, or maybe they have a bigger aerobic base or whatever that allows them to do that. But for me, I need to like feel it and I need to feel like pretty often. Like if I'm not doing like the specific feeling, like I don't respond very well, like emotionally. So like this is less from like the nuts and bolts of like how well people are going to respond to actual training. So I think so to answer your question, no, I don't think so. I think some people might do this and they might just like feel sluggish, might not feel fast enough, or they might want to go harder. Other people might like how I am, like who need to like sit there and feel it and that might be predictive. But I wouldn't think so. I'm gonna say no. I don't think that is how it can be predictive.
It's so interesting how there seems to be many different pathways towards getting a very fast Hyrox time. And it doesn't seem like there's a uniform optimal athlete profile yet, which I think is what makes the sport so interesting.
So you're talking to people. What are you thinking? Where are you leaning on this?
So I think you see a lot of different backgrounds coming into Hyrox. You definitely see people coming more from the CrossFit side, and I think on the surface level, a lot of people would expect those athletes to do better. They see the strength component of Hyrox, they see the sleds, they see the lunges, they see the wall balls. They think someone from a CrossFit background, they're the ones who are going to do well. I think in reality, what we're seeing is that the triathletes and the people more from the endurance background tend to have an easier transition. I'd say runners tend to do pretty well also. But the thing about triathletes is that they also have this strength endurance side, which they're getting from the cycling in particular, which seems to be making the transition even easier. So far, I'm thinking that kind of background might have a slight benefit. But yeah, I think in terms of the specific program that's right for a specific person, it really does depend on their background as well.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I've thought about this too, right? Like if you take a triathlete straight off of a triathlon and take a CrossFit athlete straight out of a CrossFit competition, you make them do a Hyrox, the CrossFitter's probably going to win the first one. But if you have them trained for Hyrox for a year, the triathlete's going to win the next one. Just once they get a feel for like, once they can get the required strength and figure out what the actual demands are, their aerobic base and capacity is just like so much more elevated. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think the high level runners haven't, and like yeah, I was thinking that like I think I was the only collegiate runner in the Elite 15. And on the women's side, I think it is just Meg. I know Sinead Bent is a pretty accomplished runner, but it's not as many runners as you would think.
Right.
Compared like that, it is just like such a running dominated sport. But yeah, and I think as we progress, right, like kind of how we saw in CrossFit, like younger athletes see it and then they start training for it. So we're going to start to see people without broad backgrounds, and their background is going to be Hyrox, right?
100%. Yeah, we we
And
we re we really haven't seen this generation of athletes come in that are focused on high rocks from the get-go. Like, we haven't seen any 13 to 14-year-olds, like, really commit to taking up high rocks and then really peaking in their early to mid-20s. Like, that just hasn't happened yet.
it's actually like I was looking back at some old results, and the first Hyrox event in 2018 was won by Lucas Storath, and Alex Ronkovich got second. He must have been at the time. Alex, I think, is like 32 now. So how many years? 7 years. So what was he? Early mid 20s or whatever. Still not his background. But Tim Vinish ran that race,
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
he must have
As
been.
an 18-year-old,
Yeah,
I
he
believe.
was basically a kid, right? So and now he's the world champ. So that could in like 4 or 5 years there could be like 3 or 4 Tim Vinishes each year. And all of a sudden, the Elite 15 is 15, 27 to 25-year-olds. You
Yeah,
know, so I think it will happen,
I
but
think so too.
right now it's like you got old guys like me out there that are still just plugging away. But yeah, because everyone has a different background. But soon it's going to be like their background is Hyrox.
100%. Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. Yeah, and yeah, in some ways, it's a very special era to see the average age of the elite athletes being 32 years old.
Right.
Yeah, and then we got Rich Ryan, 39, still plugging
Hanging in
away, still
there.
doing
Hanging
exceptionally.
in there. Yeah, so we'll definitely see how that changes in the next like this is the early era stuff. In 10 years, if this is still a thing, it's not going to be like this.
Yeah, okay, okay. So Rich, let's talk a little bit more about that age side. I think on the one hand, I think a lot of people are very inspired by your example. I think, me personally, I'm in my early 30s, but I see what you've been able to do as a 39-year-old, and it gives me incredible motivation to know that that's possible. But help me understand, like, what are some of the challenge or the limitations that you feel like you've been running into as you have been approaching this new era?
Yeah, I like, and how we touched in the beginning, I feel like I'm still improving. Right.
Yes,
I feel like
yes.
if I put my focus towards something, I am able to improve at the rate. What rate am I improving versus what rate could I have improved in my like mid 20s? Who's to say? Right. But I think a lot of the limitations in this sport in general do come from overtraining. I think one of the hardest things about Hyrox is not overtraining, that honestly. And I think a lot of the younger athletes who are coming in don't have a specific maturity level in terms of their training. So they just run into setbacks. And I'm at this point now where I think it's an advantage to understand like what I am capable of doing in training and doing it repeatedly and not having to have some injury pop up or have to miss workouts. Like 2 or 3 years ago when I was doing a little bit, I was doing a lot more just like of everything. I was just doing a ton of everything. And I just was like missing all my workouts, but I didn't really realize it because I was still completing them, but I wasn't hitting them with the intent that I really needed to. Like the intensity wasn't there to really move the needle. So that is something that I've actually used to my advantage in taking like strategic rest days, making sure that when I show up to a quality session that I'm going to be able to put out everything that I can. Where in the past I was kind of like, oh yeah, I'm working on fatigued legs. That's good. In retrospect, that's not good. If like the workouts aren't going well, that's bad. So like understanding like that is really the thing that I need to put a focus on. For most athletes at my age, like it's going to be time. For most athletes who do have regular jobs, it's time. I'm lucky enough. I wouldn't consider myself a full-time athlete, but I have a lot of time to train. So I am able to craft that into my life. One thing that will start that does seem, again, I'm not sure because I've never, as we get older, like the movement quality piece kind of suffers. Like we get our patterns are just wired and we just like kind of continuously move in ways that are less advantageous, and it just makes the movement quality worse and worse and worse. And the longer time that we're alive, the more time that we have to move poorly. And this is something that I feel like I've just had to do a lot of like undoing with like pain and like lower back, knee pain, ankle pain. So like general pain, I think, is a limiter
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of athletes who are in their like mid to late 30s, mid to late 40s and above. So making sure I'm spending time undoing those things. And if I run out of time there, like that, I think could be an issue.
Yeah, I think you've mentioned a little bit of struggling with the lunges in particular this season. And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So how were you able to work around that? Or what was your strategy for dealing with some of that pain?
It's just like taking time. It just takes time, right? Like my warm ups are longer. Like I've like trying to find tactics that work really well, finding resources that might be less than traditional, and like the knees over toes guide. I'm familiar with him. His stuff's like great.
Ben
So
Patrick.
yeah, I've used a lot of his stuff. And there's a movement specialist out here in Boulder. His name's Lawrence Van Lingen, who just like these practitioners who are talking a lot more about kind of how to move and like creating space so that you're moving properly, and just like really buying into just like weird stuff, honestly, has been, and like being open-minded instead of just like doing like this traditional physical therapy stuff, or just like what you learned in like a NASM handbook, like being able to look beyond and just like knowing that I don't really know how to do any of this stuff, but some people do. So just trying to find answers and just like being very open-minded around what could potentially work. Cause I've played around with a lot of weird stuff and it all works to a certain degree. And then just like having different tools in my tool belt because I am trying to continuously like feel better.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, and definitely that continuous experimentation, that's something I really respect from you as well, Rich. I think anybody who's listened to the RMR training podcast, we've seen your journey and we've seen just how much you've changed and adapted over the last few years. So that's always really cool to see. One other side I want to touch on, it's this mindset side. So you've talked about these 40 to 60-minute grindy workouts. We know that Hyrox in itself is a grind. A lot of people don't want to go into that pain. As soon as they get there, it's so uncomfortable that they want to stop. You're obviously somebody who can push through this, and so I'm curious, what are your tips in terms of the mindset? Like how can you help someone to really enjoy or want to go into that hard space?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a tough one, right? Because the way I look at it and the way I can justify it to myself is that it's part of the process, right? Like I really enjoy being engaged in some kind of process, and the process of improving for Hyrox, like this is required. Like having to be there is required. And a lot of times when I'm doing these workouts, and say it is a linear progression, right? Say like last week I did 40 minutes, this week I'm doing 45 minutes. As soon as I hit that 40-minute mark, the discomfort is like exponential, right? It's like beyond where I've gone before. But I know that's where I need to go. Like I know that's where we're going to make our money here. Like this is where the improvement happens because this is where we haven't been. Right. So like I like to engage in that process and knowing that there's like pieces that I have to move around to really continue to improve. So that's how I really like to think of it. And I like to be like process oriented, where if it's this big thing where I used to get into these moments and just try to like mentally buckle down or like think about what this means about me as a person if I can't do it. It's like it's too weighty. It's too much. And it's like, am
Yeah,
I a
yeah.
failure if I don't want to sit here? It's like nobody wants to sit here. Nobody wants to do this. Like this is not uncomfortable. Like you want the byproduct, you want the results, and you want to be done and like feel good about what you accomplished. So like that's why you have to do it. Like you can't get that feeling of accomplishment. You can't get that byproduct of like being better than you were before if you're not just like willing to go there like a little bit at a time. And it doesn't mean anything in the moment when you don't want to and if you want to quit, but knowing that like you have to do it to get where you ultimately want to go is just like something that I always am thinking about in these workouts.
Do you feel like this is something that you've increased your tolerance for over time, or has it been more difficult to get there? What
Yeah,
is your sense?
it goes back to like the maturity of as an athlete, right? Like, and when I was first really into all this stuff, endurance in general, like my goal was to win. Like if I
Yeah,
would didn't feel like I was winning, I didn't feel like I had value, and I didn't feel like anything that I didn't want to do anything else. So like it was actually a detractor. It's a strong motivator when you're winning, but when you're not winning, it's just incredibly distracting because it's not realistic, you know. So like then the why I'm doing it has had to change. And then like leaning into this like process part and like, oh, I actually just love doing this. I love having a project. I love being able to feel progress and feel like that I'm bettering myself as I go. Then it just makes it easier. So yeah, I think as the maturity of as an athlete going through this multiple times and just like really engaging with the process and understanding that's why I'm doing it makes it a lot easier. Where before I wasn't quite sure. Like I came in, I was like, I'm doing this because I've always been an athlete. Like this is something that I just do. And then like when the results didn't come the way that I wanted them to come, it got like harder. But now that I'm like on the other side of it, and I'm like, no, I just like the process. I like this project. It doesn't feel as hard. It feels more exciting.
amazing, amazing. Okay, let's pivot a little bit. So I want to talk about doubles as well.
Oh
So
yeah, for sure.
you ran a 48:31. Is that still the world record time for doubles, Rich?
It is, and it
Okay.
was a faster time than so Palaio and I we had the open doubles record as well, and I think our time was like 48:38. We actually ran faster in pro. The open record since been broken twice. The Sutherlands broke it, and then like later that weekend in Berlin, Fabi Eisenhower, I think Eisen
Yeah, yeah.
something, and our guy Jake Williamson took it down. And they're the first athletes under 48, I think, the 47 something.
Okay, okay. But as of now, you currently hold the men's pro doubles world record along with Palaio in Miami. So, what do you think you figured out about doubles? What do you think has enabled you to do so well in that event?
I mean, having a great partner like is really nice. Having someone that like matches my strengths almost to a T. Like the running really matters a lot, you know? And like if you can have a partner that you can like trust that if they push, you can go with, and if you push, they can go with you is really helpful, right? So it's like a bit of a cheat code. And it goes back to just like the mid distance. Having a little bit of break is really nice for me. That's how I would prefer it. Like we talked about it a couple times now. It's like the grind is hard, and I've had to like really take this process of like enjoying it. But I really enjoy the high end and the rest. So it's like it just kind of fits the skill set a little bit more, and that the running's a little bit more important. It has is really helpful. So, I mean, the first time we ran doubles together, we set that open record. So I don't necessarily know if we figured anything out other than just like improving our own fitness and like being able to kind of like refine a little bit more.
Okay, yep. So making those incremental improvements, and perhaps this is just the event that's really tailored towards you and Paleo's strengths. It might just be the perfect event for your.
Yeah, it might be, and it's gonna be it's gonna be fun to watch how the doubles evolves in terms of like strategy. Like you're starting to see that everybody kind of does everything the same way in the individual race. You know, like people kind of all do the burpees the same. Like if you are not moving well in wall balls, like you're gonna be left behind. Like people kind of look the same in wall balls. People kind of look the same on the sleds. In doubles, like there's just like a lot more like nuance, a lot more like transitions, a lot more strategy. So that's gonna be fun to see how that kind of comes along and see how things kind of change.
Okay, okay, and so I also want to talk about just this overall picture about your life, Rich. So you said that you don't consider yourself to be a full time athlete right now. You have other responsibilities. You have a coaching business. You run a podcast. You create these YouTube videos as well. Are those other things your main responsibilities, or do you have other major components outside of that as well?
So yeah, the business, like how I make my living is by like working in like having my own little like fitness business. So that's been able to sustain since 2000. I went full time with an online fitness business in 2017, and I was working in the fitness business as like a trainer and like group fitness instructor starting in like 2014 or 2015. So yeah, that's number one, and I feel like I can justify that they are kind of the same. Like my training is good for the business, and like my performance is good for business. And I feel like the more I'm like sitting and thinking about this type of stuff for the business side of things with the content, that is a directly relates to how well my training goes and how well I'm racing. So like it's kind of the same now, but and that's how I justify it anyway. So I don't, it's like not full-time athlete, but kinda. It's like athlete, content creator, coach kind of thing is kind of I guess where I'm at.
It's a very unified life at this point. It feels like every single component is reinforcing each other, and you've kind of set yourself up for the long term as well. So
I
yeah,
hope. Yeah, yeah. Where that's the plan. But yeah, that is like I wouldn't have my wife would say that I'm like a professional. She would tell people that and I'd be like, dude, no, I'm not. Like stop saying that to people. But now like I do feel like when I go to these races, it's my job for sure. Like when I'm training, it's
100%.
like, okay, yeah, this is like actually part of my job, which is awesome. Which was like, kind of like the idea in the first place. Like I wanted to like be an athlete more than anything else. Like just like who I was. So I just like tried to build a business so I can do it. And yeah, it's kind of worked so far.
Amazing, amazing. And so obviously Hyrox has gone through this tremendous explosion. Just the number of people racing has grown tremendously. We've also seen a lot more sponsors come into the picture as well. Has that changed the game for the pro athletes or the elite athletes in Hyrox? How much has this growth really impacted you guys?
It's definitely starting to. In years past, there would be deals for the top one or two people in either gender, and even those I don't think were like necessarily enough to sustain 100% like a professional lifestyle in terms of like an athlete. But now there's like a little bit of something for everyone, and it does take the stress off of training, off of like the workload I suppose people could put on. They could like maybe do a little bit less, or even think about going full time. So it is absolutely going to change the game. I think this is going to be the first year where we see most people in Elite 15, like the majority of Elite 15, not having like a full time job.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
think right now, I don't know. I like, and that's a lot of people are like me, like they are doing some coaching or they're like work at a gym. They're gym owners, so they aren't sustaining 100% off of their athletic performance. But I think this is a year where we're going to see, whatever, more than 15 people of the 30 kind of being able to live off of just like their racing.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a transitional season in that sense.
And that's going to be like it's better, but it's also going to be like stressful for people, right? Like for racing for their livelihood, that's hard. That's like hard to do something like that, you know?
That is hard. That is hard. Okay, Rich. So another one of the most interesting things of this last season was seeing Nick Bear enter the
Yeah.
picture, and obviously you got to train very closely with Nick Bear. So tell us that story. So how did you come to work alongside Nick Bear for this season?
So, if anybody follows like Nick Bear and his
Maybe
content,
first of all, like who is Nick Bear? Like
right,
maybe
right.
help set that scene for us as well.
So Nick Bear is a fitness entrepreneur. He started and is CEO of a wildly popular supplement company here in the United States called BPN, Bear Performance Nutrition. But he's also what would be considered an influencer, right? Like he has a huge YouTube channel, a big Instagram, and he's a very inspirational figure for a lot of athletes. And he's kind of like the OG hybrid athlete where he was a big bodybuilder, huge jack guy, and then just decided he wanted to take on new challenges, and endurance is something that he's like really dove into. And then like so he's like a massive dude, right? Like he's super jacked. He probably like weighs 200 some pounds, but he's just like yoked. And so like people see him and are very inspired by him because he is able to kind of put his passion and focus on a specific goal, and it like works out for him generally because of this work ethic that he has. So he's been doing these two things, like he's super jacked. He ran like 2:39 in a marathon, I think. And then like Hyrox came out. It's kind of like this perfect blend of both things for him, right? So he decided that he was going to start training for a Hyrox. And he's also, because he's an avid learner and a podcast listener, he found RMR Training Podcast. So he'd be like listening to the podcast as he was doing his like zone 2 stuff, and just kind of like enjoyed the content, reached out, was like, hey, I like what you guys are doing. We had him on the show. Then he was like, hey, come down to like, love to have you and Ryan come down to HQ, and we'll do like his YouTube type of stuff, and being able to just kind of learn from each other. So it was a really cool opportunity, right? Like he was getting into Hyrox, and we were happened to be like the domestic athletes that he like engaged with the content the most. And it was just like a good fit. So we just kind of went down there, hung out with him, threw down, and it was awesome.
Okay, okay. And what did you learn about training from watching the way that Nick approaches things?
He's so locked in with nutrition, it's crazy. Like it is there's just so much more that we can do with nutrition in terms of like timing and being like intentional, and he does it all. And I think he does it a lot because, well, he came from bodybuilding background. He's done some bodybuilding shows and just powerlifting, so he kind of knows how that all works, and he's like applied a lot of that to endurance, and he's just like super locked in, and like the results that he gets physically and like aesthetically and also performance wise, I think it's a huge byproduct of like how locked in he is on the nutrition side. So that was one thing that because I think I'm pretty locked in, but like not compared to him. He was like really locked in.
Dialed in.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Yeah. And obviously, yeah, Nick is a tremendous presence on YouTube. But Rich, you've also been growing your presence this year. You passed the 10K subscriber mark on YouTube.
Yep.
It seems like your content, it was already very good, but it seems like it is dialed up in terms of quality and in terms of just overall production over this past year. So, what are some of the things that you've really learned about creating content over this past year?
Yeah, and that was also something that was really cool to see how they do things down at BPN, where like it's a team. It's not like Nick's not like doesn't have his DJI Pocket Osmo like doing stuff. He has like professional people following, and like it's a whole thing. It's really planned out. So that was something that I was like, like I can't do this all on my own. Like, and if I'm going to, it's just not going to be good, or it's going to be too much work, right? Like it's not too much work to the point where it's like, oh, I don't want to do work. It's just like, but it's too much work for me to like do a good enough job to like my standard, right? Like if I don't want to be a full-time video editor. I don't want to learn all these things. Like I don't mind it. I like it a little bit, but like I like the concepts and the thinking. I like the training. I like how it's all going to come together, but like the nuts and bolts of it, like I'm not that good at it. So I needed to find help. Like I had to like actually take time to invest in it. And this is something that I've done business-wise for the past year or so, is really just like I can't do everything. I can't, like, I am the bottleneck, and understanding that and trying to outsource and finding people that I work really well with and that we have like the same type of vision and who can make the things that I want in my brain to come to life, and just like collaborating with them has been huge. So like, yeah, I've just like hired people to help me with the production and like the shooting and editing. And it's more just like reinvesting back into that space and just like understanding like what can be done. And it can't all be done by me.
Amazing, amazing. So yeah, so it's really taking that team approach. And how do you think about balancing the podcast that you're doing? So obviously you have one of the biggest podcasts in the Hyrox space. You also now have one of the biggest YouTube channels as well, especially around the educational side. So how do you think about balancing those two areas that you have?
It's they're like the information, although is similar, right? Like I can repurpose something. I can have a concept, say whatever. It could be whatever, a bunch of stuff we just talked about is stuff that is content that like I've been able to kind of think and talk about. And say it's like, okay, we're gonna do a threshold for Hyrox, right? Like I can just kind of dump all my thoughts out in this way that's like non-formal on a podcast. And it's like it's just the format is looser, right? It's conversational. It's just like we're hanging out. We're just talking about what's going on. But the YouTube is like very much storytelling driven, right? And we were talking a little bit before we even popped on, like being able to hook people in early, and like I wanted it to just be like, this is good content. I think this is stuff that people will learn. But if they don't watch the video, then they won't get what I think is beneficial for their Hyrox results. So I gotta play the game, right? I gotta like try to figure out these thumbnails, try to figure out these titles, work the first 30 seconds, and like make sure that they feel like the time that they're gonna spend clicking on this video is gonna be worth it. And like that's how you do, like the packaging and like the hook has been just like a completely different side of content creation, and think of it more of a storytelling. Where podcast, it's just like it is more it is more just informal. It's loose, right? Like people are along with you and they opt in. This is an hour long, right? They're like, I'm in for this hour, whatever. I'm here. Like I'm gonna I trust that this is gonna be fine. YouTube is shorter and the attention span shorter. So like locking people in has been a challenge. And like trying to figure out like the best route from a storytelling perspective is something I never had to do before. But the content is still the same content, but just like how it's packaged is just like so much different.
Interesting, interesting. And which video are you most proud of from the last year? So for those listening, if they wanted to check out one Rich Ryan video, which one would it be?
So the video that seems to be doing the best is about like the threshold training and like what that kind of means and how that concept kind of works. And then also there's a like secondary video under it that is how then to like put it into practice. And those type of training concepts I feel like is where I excel the most. And the viewership proves that. I really like the race recap ones. I think that those are fun. It's like a little bit of like behind the scenes and just like being able to talk through like the race strategy. Everything I do, I'm going to come at it with a lens of like, I want the viewer to come away with something that's going to make them better at Hyrox, right? Like, I'm not here to be like, I think I'm awesome, so check out how awesome I am during my awesome content. It's more just like, hey, like, here's some stuff that I learned in my last race in Hyrox. So like, I feel like this could help you as well. So I like the race recap ones. I thought the Worlds one was good. I like the doubles one. I think doubles one was really good because then I started to get editors for that. Before that, not so good. But the ones where they have like editors in like the past like 3 months are like all like way better.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, Rich, a final question. So you're a person who's constantly learning. You're always discovering new things. What is at the edge of your curiosity right now? What are you really curious about? What are you looking into? What has been capturing your attention recently?
Yeah, really, really good question. Because it's off season, I like to have time to. This isn't a great off season. I got to be ready for October. Like I'm like looking at like 12 weeks right now for the first major. I would like to have a little bit more time. Two concepts that I've been like kind of diving into are velocity based training, VBT, which is basically how fast you're moving during your strength. Right. I have a sensor. It's called Output. There's a couple different sensors that work, and you can like strap it to your barbell, you can strap it to your wrist, you can strap it to your foot, and then it like kicks to an app and tells you how fast you're actually moving. Right? So this is almost like heart rate training for strength, right? Because then you can kind of set a goal. Like if you're, say for back squat, you're going to want to move at 0.8 to 1 meter per second, right? And that's kind of in this velocity based training like block, like bucket. And if you don't hit that, say you're too fast, you put more weight on until you're in that zone. And if you're not fast enough, you take weight off. So it's a way to kind of undulate your training so that you're hitting the marker and you're not just like, all right, last week was 225, this week's 230, no matter how I feel or no matter what's going to happen, right? So like, I'm very interested in the velocity-based training. I've been playing around with it, and it's been making me feel like I'm able to do these lifts and not feel like I'm overdoing it, and I'm still like hitting the target, right? So it's like a more objective way for weight training, which has been an interesting shift because it's so objective because it's like just pounds and kilos, but like having the speed part has been kind of cool. Another thing that I'm just like thinking about a lot is like what's actually happening lactate wise in all of the movements. What happens when you push the sled and like the measurements are millimoles, right? And usually in these like in our threshold, if we're like sitting there in this like a zone 4, we want to be between 2 and 4 millimoles. But when you push a sled globally, how much more lactate is like presented? Is it very local, or do you go from like 4 to 10? And then what's that do to that run? And then when you do that run, does it stay elevated or does it drop down below? So I want to start playing around with some lactate testing. I've done that, but just like straight single modality, like on a bike or run, and they'll be able to tell me like what my heart rate is based off my lactate, whatever. I want to know exactly what I was doing in Hyrox. So I think I'm going to get a meter and kind of play around with that and then see like how it works. And so I can be like a little bit more dialed in to understand like what's happening fatigue wise during the stations of Hyrox.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That was actually so I recently spoke to Gomar from WOD Science, and that was one of the areas we talked about a lot. There actually are some studies now that are looking at both that lactate and VO2 in a Hyrox setting. And those are very new to come out, and it's absolutely fascinating to look at. And the other thing you might consider getting is one of those portable VO2 masks, but that would be like going to like the next level. I don't know if you want to go there, Rich.
I can't say never. There's going to be something right now. I'm going to be like, nah, but in like a year, I'll probably be like, yeah, I should probably get one of those things.
Amazing, amazing. Well, it's going to be super fascinating to track your progress this season. Highly recommend the RMR Training Podcast. Highly recommend Rich's YouTube channel. Definitely, if you're listening, go and check those out. But Rich, Ryan, thanks so much for being part of the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's super fun, man.